going to kind of re-lecture today. I didn't feel like I was at my best game the other day. You know, I want to tell you something. Teaching's no different than being in athletics or doing anything else. You want to get better every day. And there's days I have that are good and days I have that aren't so good. So I always evaluate my performance after I get done, and I think, oh, that wasn't very good. So you work to be better. So the overall topic, again, kids, is the planting of English America. And England plants the Jamestown seedling. And we told you that in 1606, just 2 years after peace occurred between England and Spain, the English hand of destiny in America started in Virginia. And what we meant by the hand of destiny is we become Americans with this simple experiment here. And we told you that the Virginia Company of London received a charter from King James I. And who was nice enough to tell me what a charter was in their thesaurus? Is that you, Chantel? And what was a charter?
A document granting rights.
A document granting rights. And they got that document granting rights from King James I of England to have a settlement in the New World. Now, you got to remember, and I hope you got this emphasized, is that this Virginia Company of London was owned by a group of investors. And what do investors look to do, Kylie? Make money. Investors don't like to lose money, okay? So they were looking to make money and great profits in the New World. And the main attraction for these investors by investing into the Virginia Company of London and sending a settlement to the New World was what, Blaine? What was one thing they were hoping to gain by this? How are they going to make money?
Gold.
Stories of vast amounts of gold in the New World, right? And Nick, what was the other thing they were looking for?
Like a path to the East Indies.
A passageway through the North and South American continent to the East Indies, which were rumored to be rich with gold as well. Okay? Now, the colonists that were chosen for this new settlement were under great pressure. Now, do you remember, Courtney, why they were under such great pressure? These colonists that decided to come over? What was the pressure they were under? We'll get...
They had to succeed.
Yeah, they had to succeed. If they didn't find this gold or maybe this passageway to the East Indies, what do you think the Virginia Company of London was going to do, Hannah? Well, basically say, well, we're done with this and leave them there. Then they were going to be in a land that they were not familiar with, a wilderness, little chance of survival. So the pressure was on them. Now, the thing that we tried to emphasize is that these investors in this Virginia Company of London had no idea when they started this settlement that they would plant the seeds of what would become a mighty nation as we know it today, the United States of America. They had no idea that was going to happen. And we talked about this charter, and that initial settlement of the New World resulted in, it guaranteed these overseas settlers what? What did it guarantee if they went over to the New World, Gracie?
Guaranteed them their rights.
Of Englishmen.
Yeah.
Of Englishmen. The same rights. It also, this charter would result in some subsequent colonies. We're going to have the building of 13 colonies eventually as a result of this one settlement. It also guaranteed these settlers that they would have the traditions of England, right? When they were in the settlement, they wouldn't lose those. And so they were really into their rights. They wanted to have the same rights as England. They wanted to have the same traditions. And it's ironic that 150 years after this whole thing started, these rights of Englishmen led to hot resentment against the mother country, which resulted in a fight for independence. So anyway, it all started right here. Well, now we're going to move on to the English settlement in Jamestown. I'll tell you a little bit about it. Okay? Now, this Virginia Company of London, after they got this charter from King James I, they set sail in late 1600, and they sent 3 ships to the New World. 3 ships with settlers in it. So the Virginia Company of London set sail to the New World in late 1600. What do I mean by late 1600?
1681.
Oh, late 1600. What's late 2015? What would be considered late 2015? December. Okay, so late would be late in the year. Okay, thank you. Now these 3 ships carried approximately 100 English settlers, and they were all men. Sorry, ladies. They were all men. So the first settlers to the New World, due to the Virginia Company of London and their charter, were 100 English settlers, all men. Now they left in late 1600, which would be November, December, right? They arrived on May 24th, 1607. Took them a while, right? May 24th, 1607. Now, when they arrived in the New World, the 60 remaining settlers were immediately attacked by Indians. As soon as they landed on the shores, the remaining 60 were attacked by Indians, which tells you what? If the remaining 60 were attacked by Indians, what happened to the other 40? They died on the journey. Okay, so only 60% of these settlers even made it across the ocean. And they landed at the mouth of Chesapeake Bay. You know where that's at?
Maine.
What?
No, my bad. I'm at Maryland. There you go.
Maryland, yeah. Here's Chesapeake. Here's Chesapeake Bay right here. He's a member of the Pilgrims who were supposed to land in that area and end up there. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. So they landed at Chesapeake Bay. And as soon as they landed, the 60 remaining men were attacked by Indians. So that means that 40 perished along the initial voyage. Okay? Now, once they fought off that Indian attack, where might you choose your location for your settlement? What? What's that?
On the coast.
Well, what's on the coast? Wide open beaches. So where might you want to go to set up your settlement? You couldn't hunt many, you couldn't bow hunt many deer in the beaches. Where would you hunt? Where would you get? Where might you find some protection? The wooded area. So what they did is they went along the James River. Okay, the James River, which we'll talk more about in history. Even when we get to the Civil War, the James River will be really important. But they set their settlement on the wooded banks of the James River. Now, was it called the James River when they got there? No, it was just a river. And so they named it after King James I. So for protection from future Indian attacks, the colonists, the 60 remaining, chose a location on the wooded banks of the James River, okay, which is in Virginia. Now, it was very easy to defend. It was a good spot. The problem was, it was mosquito infested beyond belief and devastatingly unhealthy. When I say devastatingly unhealthy, what is that going to mean? It's so unhealthy that it may cause death. Okay? So it was a good location to protect yourself from Indian attack, but it was mosquito infested beyond belief, and it was so unhealthy it was almost unbearable. What did they name this new settlement? Jamestown. Very good. Jamestown. And the only people, well, I shouldn't say people, the only things that prospered the early years of Jamestown were the buzzards. They were the only things that prospered, which tells you what? People died. It was not a very good thing. Matter of fact, this initial voyage was tough. Well, the Virginia Company sent another expedition in 1609, just a single ship in 1609. And it suffered bad luck as well, because before they ever even got to the New World, or what we know now as America, they shipwrecked off Bermuda. You know where Bermuda is? You ever heard of the Bermuda Triangle? That area. It's an area out here in the Atlantic. So before they even get to the New World, this new charter, this new ship, wrecks off Bermuda. And they lose a bunch of their supplies, and a majority of their leaders were lost during that shipwreck. So you got a bunch of somewhat derelicts left over that survived. And what do you think they did? Do you think they turned around and went home? Nope, they actually did reach Virginia. Now, they lost all their supplies and their good leaders. So they lost their brains, so to speak, and they lost their supplies. So what would you do if you were them? If this was the surviving group right here that made it to Virginia, what would be the first thing you do? Would you go out and look for gold and look for that passageway to the East Indies? What would you do? By God, you'd find some food, you'd find some shelter. Well, these guys were too stupid to do that, actually. They wasted their time grubbing for non-existent gold instead of gathering provisions. And a lot of them perished. They died by the dozens. And ironically, what were the woods full of? Game and fish. And they just didn't pay any attention. They were so worried about grubbing up the gold that they quit worrying about themselves. And so what are they lacking in this settlement? Brains. And who usually has the brains in an outfit? The leader. So they're lacking leadership, big time, right? They got no leadership. Well, the much needed leader that settlement needed arrived in 1608. And he saved the Jamestown settlement from utter collapse. Anybody know who that person was? Captain John Smith. He was a very resourceful young adventurer. He came in as part of the group, and he decided to take over leadership because he could see that this was going nowhere fast. So Captain Smith took over the leadership of the Jamestown colony, and he soon whipped the gold-hungry colonists into line. Okay? They needed a leader. They were leaderless. It doesn't work very good if you don't have a leader. I don't care if it's a sports team, your drama production, your work environment. If you don't have a leader, it doesn't work. Okay? And Smith became the leader. His rule became, and from time to time I'm going to give you quotes, and you really don't need to write these quotes down unless I say, hey, you better get this one down, but you should listen to it. So this was Smith's rule. He said, he who shall not work shall not eat. Okay? He who shall not work shall not eat. Okay? So what he did is he went in there and he got them to understand, we got to make provisions, we got to build shelters, we got to feed ourselves, we got to work. We're not looking around for gold. We're not worried about gold right now. That's not our number one priority. Our number one priority is survival. And so we're going to work to survive, then we'll look for gold, so to speak. Well, in December of 1607, and this happened before he took over the leadership, it's just a story I want to tell you, he was kidnapped by Indian chief Powhatan. He's on your ID sheet. So Smith was captured prior to becoming leader. This happened in 1607. He's kidnapped by the Indian chief Powhatan. And he was subjected to a mock execution. So he was captured, John Smith was captured by Indian chief Powhatan, and he was subjected to a mock execution. What's a mock execution, Hannah? Fake execution. Now, he was saved by Chief Powhatan's daughter, Pocahontas, who dramatically put her head between Smith's and the war clubs of the captives. So they were about to bash old Smith over the head, and Pocahontas dramatically put her head in front of Captain Smith's and prevented him from being executed in this mock execution. It was almost like a dramatic play production, honestly. Now there's a reason they did that. There's two reasons why they put Smith through this mock execution. Do you think he thought it was a mock execution? You know, but it was. And Pocahontas dramatically pulled a Mr. Rant. I've seen her act. She's an awesome actor. Just rushed in there and stuck her head right between Captain Smith's head and the war clubs and said, save my man, save him, or whatever. Okay? Now, so he was saved. Now, Indian Chief Powhatan did this for two reasons. What do you think the two reasons that he did this? Didn't kill him, made it a mock execution. Why do you think he did that? Why would somebody do that to you?
It's still fear.
Close, Nick, close. He wanted to impress Captain Smith with his power. Not so much fear, but I'm sure he was scared. But he wanted to impress Captain Smith with his power. Because if he impressed Captain Smith with his power, who else might he impress? The settlers. Yeah. Now this might sound backwards, but it actually makes a lot of sense. The second reason why, or what the symbolism was of that mock ritual, is he wanted to demonstrate to Captain Smith that the Indians had a desire for a peaceful relationship with them, not a warlike one. Because if he wanted a warlike one, what would he have done? He would have killed him. He wanted to know, hey, I've got power. And I could have killed you if I wanted to, but I didn't kill you because I want to show you that I would like peace with your settlers, not problems. Okay? So, those were the reasons behind that. Now, moving back to Captain Smith and his leadership, despite his efforts, the colonists continued to die, and die at an alarming rate. So he bettered things, but he didn't stop the death. Now, these guys were still starving to death, and they were driven to many desperate acts. Number one, they were reduced to eating dogs, cats, rats, and mice because they couldn't find food, especially in what months, you think?
Winter.
Winter. So they were reduced to eating dogs, cats, rats, and mice. Some of them, as gross as this is, Buck, some of them couldn't find any food, so they actually dug up corpses of those that died and fed on that. One guy got so desperate, I am not making this up, killed, salted, and ate his wife for dinner, for which he was later executed for doing so. You couldn't murder people because you were hungry, even if they were already dead. But this guy, not kidding, killed his wife, salted her up, fed on her, and then he was executed for his crime of murder. True story. So, put yourself in perspective. If I took all of you and dumped you in the most mosquito-infested, unhealthy, wooded area, and said, and you had no way to go to the store, you had nothing with you, what in the world, how long would you survive?
5 minutes.
Yeah, some of you not very long. Blaine thinks he would, because he's kind of an outdoorsman, I don't know. So, listen to this. By 1609, 400 settlers had actually made it to Virginia. By 1609, 400 settlers had actually made it to Virginia. By 1609. At the end of the 1609 to 1610 winter, guess how many survived of the 400?
28.
A little more than that.
50.
60. So of the 400 settlers that were there prior to the winter of 1609, 1610, only 60 survived the winter. The rest died. 340 died. So I'll bet you those 60 that survived were tougher than you can imagine. Well, they had had enough. So a ship came about that was headed back for England. Do you think they were eager to get on it? They were. So, diseased and starving, these remaining 60 colonists dragged themselves aboard a homebound ship in the spring of 1610 and were getting ready to head home. Now, if they head home, you and I aren't sitting here probably talking about American history, right? Because who knows where the settlements would have gone. So, Virginia got a new governor that time, and his name was Lord De La Ware. Lord De La Ware. Or De La Ware. And he got on that homebound ship and he ordered those settlers back to Jamestown. Said they were not going home. And he had a plan for them that consisted of these two things. So Lord De La Ware ordered those settlers to get off those homebound ships and head back to Jamestown. And he did two things when he got them back to Jamestown. First of all, he imposed a harsh military regime on the colony. What does that mean there, Mr. Garvin? He imposed a harsh military regime. Anybody in here have brothers or sisters been to boot camp? Okay.
regime.
Harsh military regime would mean that they were under specific orders. If they stood on a line, they didn't mess with you. Very disciplined, hardcore, like joining the military and going to boot camp. So he imposed a harsh military regime. And he also, number 2, took up aggressive military action against who? The Indians. So he basically brought these colonists back and trained them in military ways, and then undertook an aggressive military action against the Indians, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Now, disease and mishappenings still continue to plague the colonists. I'll give you another statistic. By 1625, about 8,000 adventurers had joined at one time or another the Jamestown colony. By 1625, they kept sending settlers over. So by 1625, Virginia should have had about 8,000 people in the colony. Only 1,200 of the 8,000 were still living by 1625. So you can see that was not an easy game to play, and your chances of survival if you came over with the Virginia Company of London in these several expeditions to Virginia and Jamestown, about 1,200 out of 8,000 survived the whole thing by 1625. But luckily they persevered. Okay, that'll take us to our next subtopic then, which is the Anglo-Powhatan Wars. The Anglo-Powhatan Wars. What are Anglo? What's Anglo?
Saxons.
Or white people, yeah. Anglo-Saxons, Anglo would be whites, and who would be the Powhatans? Indians. So we're going to talk about the Anglo-Powhatan